Welcome. Peter here. Thank you for joining us for our fourth virtual reading. It's not the same as an in-person reading, but it's pretty good. And I'm glad that you're here to share the evening with us, or at least for the next hour or so. I'd like to thank my Murphy writing colleagues, Stephanie Cawley and Taylor Coyle, who are doing all of the hard work behind the scenes here and making me look good. Thank you, guys. And tonight we're going to see and listen to Christine Salvatore, Roberta Clipper, and Gretna Wilkinson. You can read their bios on murphywriting.com, so I'm not going to read them to you. I assume that if you're here, you can probably do that on your own. Next Friday night, we're going to feature Murphy Writing veterans, Barbara Daniels and Andy Hockman, and a newcomer, Maribel Garcia. And if you missed our previous virtual readings or would like to see them again, go to our Murphy Writing YouTube page, and you can see them there. Stephanie will also post that link in the chat box so you can bookmark it. Speaking of the chat box, unfortunately, we have to turn off the chat for these things because the Zoom bombing that's going around. We've had a nasty incident in one of our other activities, so we don't want to inflict that on you. Instead, there's a reaction button at the bottom of this, this page that you're looking at, so you can clap or give a thumbs up or give a real thumbs up, a real clap. And if you're looking to do some writing yourself, let me tell you about our Murphy write-ins that we're doing. Every day, Monday to Friday, you'll find a prompt on our Canvas website. If you go to murphywriting.com, you can sign up for it. And you can use that to begin a new poem or a story or a piece of memoir or some sort of a hybrid. Or you can use it to deepen something that you're working on. So again, go to murphywriting.com to register. And we also have 3 write-ins each week that we do in person, Monday at 4 p.m., Wednesday 7 p.m., and Friday at noon. So this Monday at 4 p.m., we'll be back at it, and hope you can join us for that. Invite your other writer friends and those who might be interested. Our online workshops that we'll be rolling out in next month are filled, both for memoir and for poetry. However, we do have several spots that are in for tutorials that Stephanie Colley and myself will be leading. So take a look at those, and if they interest you, sign up for them. They're going to fill soon. And before we get started, I'd like to suggest you put on your camera, let your camera on so that our readers can see your faces. We were just talking about this earlier, and it's just like in a real reading. It's good to get the kind of visual feedback so that they'll feel that they're actually reading to you, which I know they are. At the bottom of the screen, you can see that you can have those where the emotions are. You can click the buttons and give a high five or a thumbs up. So anyway, let us begin now. And our first reader will be Christine Salvatore, then Robbie Clipper, and then Gretna Wilkinson. Please welcome Christine.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be doing this. Sort of. It's a little bit strange, but I want to thank, of course, Taylor and Stephanie and Peter for having me here. And I'm so excited to read with two of my favorite people, Robbie Clipper and Gretna Wilkinson. I was looking through a lot of my poems today and trying to decide which ones would fit into this, and discovered that so many of my older poems have such a different light on them in light of the world we're in right now. They just took on completely different meanings. So I'm actually going to read quite a few of my older poems, but with a little bit of astonishment of my own each time. And I hope that it's not too depressing. This is the first poem, and it is a new poem. This is the one new poem I'm going to read, and thank you to my grad students for actually workshopping with this with me online today. And it's called The Me Generation. I'm going to read the new one first, hoping that maybe you'll forget it if it's not very good by the end of the reading. All right, Me Generation. I remember back then I wore fear like a shroud they'd already buried me in. Woke up in so many places I didn't remember falling asleep in. I was 15 and flouted destruction like a t-shirt I never outgrew. My rebellious generation centered on self, and although I never soared like a rocket, the universe aligned around me, conspired against me, took every hope I had, and blanketed me with false ideology. Even rock stars grow up, grow old. Lately, I am what's left after the scavengers have eaten, picked over, bone dry, already becoming a part of the earth. I could have learned to fly, steered clear of the petrified arteries of a gravedigger's heart. Instead, I went digging in the garden alone, buried myself deep in photographs, lyrics, and smoke. Okay. All right. And this poem is called Brooding. Most nights the surface is calm. The undertow of sleep drags along, pulling you deep into imagined worry. Your vision of me on the shore just about gone, and long before you rise, your anger will surface. Your brow furrows a little more. I cannot find the rope to pull you in. With your fish scale thin skin sanded rough by the bottom, your bones brittle fish bones, and your muscles tense with the vengeance of Ahab, you rarely fight the undertow. The current under a current takes exactly what it wants and offers nothing in return. Okay, so as I was looking at poems, without really meaning to, I picked a lot of poems that have to do with leaving the house. Imagine that. They're all about going somewhere. And I wasn't really doing that on purpose, but I think we all know what we're leaning towards. So this one's called Nests. Part 1. Because we are always in need of distraction, this year it is the birds we want to know all about. Call each thing by its right name. American goldfinch, house sparrow, Carolina wren. We get closest to the wren as she builds her bowl-like nest next to our front door, lays 5 eggs, startles each time we come and go. 4 weeks pass by. The wren abandons her unhatched eggs. We forget about birds for a while, but don't dispose of the nest because it's trying to tell us something, I think, about our divided home. Call each thing by its right name. Married, separated, divorced. Unlike the wren, we cannot move on. 2. I am trying to write about a bird and a nest. I am trying to write about the nest. The bird could be the me that I want to be, who understands a futile endeavor, who abandons the nest, who knows when it's time to take flight. If there was any grieving in her bones, she took it elsewhere in the end, away from the home she made, away from the failure that found her. Will a distant bough, even broken, still support her song? These are not funny poems. I get all the sad out on the paper, so you know that I'm not sad on the outside. And but it just strikes me as ironic as I look at each title of these poems. This one is actually called "Leaving Town." Something we can't do, right? Leaving town. I try to ignore those fathers and mothers who taught that steel beams are better than the soft tips of grass. Foundations cannot be made of soil and root, that stability is all. But 3 years in a city can take the wildness out of you. Words become concrete, thoughts like cracked sidewalks. You always know where you're going, when to walk, when not to. This is a place with appointments and time budgets, where early morning is a time to get going instead of talk. Last night in a bar on Delancey Street, your breath collapsed on me. I'll tell you, there's still that urge to fight over quarters at the pool table, stay till closing, walk home on a less than brightly lit street. I can't help noticing how your sigh fell from me onto water-stained wood that had long forgotten the falling of leaves, the thrill of a storm wind. My mind rises high above the squareness of buildings, the blackness of asphalt, tries desperately to leave this vacancy and take you with me. I used to live in New Orleans, a place where there seemed to be things threatening every year, particularly with the hurricane season. And this is a poem I wrote when I first moved there in the late 90s. It's called Safety. Suddenly, Lake Pontchartrain ripples up to stone steps you meet that substitute for a shore, and it's late, and you shouldn't be here because bad things happen to average people all the time in the city, which you try not to read about in the papers, but people tell you anyway. So-and-so who owned the Vera Cruz bar on Rampart got beat to death with a baseball bat last night, but it's not that that's keeping you awake tonight, nothing like that. It's just you were lying in bed, alarm clock set, and everything ready for tomorrow. When all at once the walls moved closer to the bed, the city was too quiet, then a train whistle came so suddenly and loud, you were up and dressed and in the car before you even realized you thought you were running for your life. And now this lake, so vast, it provides a horizon with a shore nowhere in sight. And you are not so easily convinced you were any safer back in your apartment with all the doors locked. Okay, just a couple more. I wasn't timing myself. Sorry, Stephanie. So shockingly, here's another poem about going places. It's called Tuesday, Like a Premonition. This evening from somewhere outside, a siren as clear as a bell disrupted our arguing. On the streets below, cars like voles in the dark, one by one, stilled into shadows, hummed and hummed until they didn't. The nightlife of weeknight snuffed. Guilty side-eye, shame-faced, I go to bed. Morning raises me with a radical vision. I can see a road where sins like streetlights switching off one by one extinguish, and I pass beneath them, black-hearted, cold-gazed, never looking back. I have just two more poems, and one is, I'm hoping these are poems of redemption, and not, if not joy, at least something different. So this one is called Betrayal, and then I have one more. Betrayal. The dogwood startles me this morning as I mistake its flower-laden branches for snow. Disoriented again, I need flame in order to rise. I strike a match for every misunderstood thing in the forest, join forces with twigs and leaves and deer. Don't tell me not to cry. Don't tell me the wind isn't my father. I am all I've ever made myself to be. Down on my knees now, elbow deep in ash and soil, where robins ignore my persistent gardening and wait for rain. I cannot mimic their faith. I am mistaking apples for oranges. There's no telling what I'm capable of now. And this is a very old poem, and this is the one I was thinking of that did two things today. One, it is the one that absolutely I wrote years ago and has so much different meaning in this day, in this world, in these times. And secondly, it made me burst into tears earlier, and it is the happiest poem I have. So I'm going to try not to cry, and it's so good to see all of you. And here it is. And this is one I just kind of wanted to leave you guys with. Praise for the ordinary. Do not blame this mundane life on piled laundry, unmade beds, or never-ending heaps of mail. You can, without fail, find pleasure in the ordinary, contrary to what you've always been told. We make this life task by task, so do not ask where all the time is gone. We can learn to praise each day. Tonight, instead of the quiet waltz of dirty dishes and leftovers, I'll suggest a bit of a jitterbug. Wine glasses raised and barefoot will dance on the living room rug. Thank you.
Hello. I want to thank Stephanie and Taylor and Peter for inviting me to participate in this series, but also for giving us the opportunity to hear each other every Friday night and see each other too. So I am the prose writer in the group, though I write in several genres, and I'm working on nonfiction now, but I wanted to read something funny. And I don't know about my nonfiction. I don't know if it's funny. This is the beginning of a story called The Sea Always Gives Up Its Dead, which is something that my brother-in-law said to me once, misquoting Revelations. It's a little bit dark. It's a mashup of Crime and Punishment, Law and Order, the first one with Jerry Orbach. You'll hear him. And the Scott Peterson case of 2002 to 2004, which I was once obsessed with. He is the California man convicted of killing his pregnant wife so that he could be with his girlfriend without paying child support. I moved my murder story to St. Petersburg, Florida, because Crime and Punishment takes place in St. Petersburg, Russia. And the three detectives who interrogate Raskolnik are based on three characters in Crime and Punishment and Jerry Orbach. All of the names are Americanized names of the characters in Crime and Punishment. And you would see this on the page if you could see the story, but it's written in the form of a letter that Russ writes from death row to Sophie, his ex-mistress who testified against him. The sea always gives up its dead, and it starts with an epigraph from Crime and Punishment. This is by Fyodor Mikhailovich Dostoevsky, my translation. This is Raskolnikov's theory. All people are somehow divided into ordinary and extraordinary. The ordinary must live in obedience and have no right to transgress the law because they are, you see, ordinary. But the extraordinary have the right to commit any crime and to transgress the law in any way precisely because they are extraordinary. April 15th, 2005. Dear Sophie, first of all, I didn't do it. You let them tell you I did, and that's where you went wrong. We had something, Sophie, something big. I don't think you'll ever know how big. That I was married, that meant nothing compared to you and me. That's why I didn't tell you. I never wanted you to see that tacky yellow ranch I lived in either, but you did, didn't you? All over the TV after the police told the press I did it. 3 of them. They came walking across the pathetic patch of crabgrass to the door, one with a red mustache so big it completely covered his mouth. He asked the questions, the same ones they asked over the phone. When did you last see your wife? Yesterday morning. He looked up from his notes on one of those spiral top pads and stared at me through the smallest, beadiest blue-green eyes I'd ever seen. The lashes around them an obnoxious shade of orange. Where were you for 24 hours? Fishing. For 24 hours? No, I said. I came home. She wasn't here. I fell asleep. When I woke up, she still wasn't here. And you think she's missing? Did she come in while you were asleep and go out again? Did you call anyone? You guys, I mean before you called the police. No, you see, I didn't give you away. Why would I tell them I talked to you? You didn't have anything to do with it. You didn't even know she existed. Well, how was I supposed to tell you? You'd never have slept with a married man. I knew that. Not that me being married to a woman I didn't love should have made any difference. I came to you, Sophie. I loved you. Call the hospitals, the cop asked. Her mother did. How did her mother know? She lives here? No, God forbid. She wanted to know why we didn't show up for Christmas. Good question. Would you tell her? That I didn't know where Liz was? He stared at me again. Anyone go with you? Where? Fishing. No, you always go fishing alone? The way he said it, fishing, it was as if he'd meant something else, like fishing for answers, like he was doing, or there's always another fish in the sea. But I told him the truth. Yes. Where'd you go? Tampa Bay. You'd eat a fish you caught in that water? I don't eat them. You don't eat them? What do you do with them? Bury them in the backyard? Officer, I said, I'm the victim here. I lost my wife. But they didn't hear me because another one, a blonde guy, interrupted and said, right over my answer, Fitz, maybe we should check the house. Okay, if we check the house, Mr. Skolnick? She's not here. Fitz stuck his red face right up in front of mine, those beady eyes shifting, his mouth like a fish's under the red hairs underneath his pointy nose. Then he backed off, walked to the front door, and opened it. After you, Mr. Skolnick, what'd you catch? I passed him and turned around in the living room just inside the door. Nothing. You went fishing and didn't catch any fish? It happens. Off a dock or off a boat? Boat. Where's the boat? In the driveway. The one I had on the trailer behind the pickup I told you I borrowed from the docks. Okay, I'll admit that was a pretty bad lie. Why would anybody borrow such a beat up truck? And even then, Liz was always bitching that it cost too much, that when the baby came, I'd have to sell it, buy an SUV. Mind if we take a look? Fitz asked. The third guy, a young one with dark curly hair, called from the doorway. I got it. She's not in there, I said. Fitz looked at me again, his eyes so squinted up that all I could see were the hard black pupils behind those red eyelashes. How do you know where she is? You reported her missing. Is she missing? Yeah, I said. I wouldn't have called you if she wasn't missing. Mr. Skolnick, you knew who's most at risk of battery? Pregnant women, and by the fathers of their babies, no less. So you see, they had it in for me before she even washed up on the beach, just like O.J. Simpson, except O.J. got off. Money, that, and I swear, if I was black, they never would have dared to treat me like a criminal. Though there's a hell of a lot of black guys in here. The way I look at it, there's two kinds of people. People who live for some kind of purpose, heroes and trailblazers. People who live outside the law, and they can do it too. They're in the minority. But most people exist to make more of themselves. Fathers and sons, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, or worse yet, the ladies who have one kid after another. My sister's like that, Donna. I never told you about my sister. Well, you're not alone. My mother never even told me she gave up a baby for adoption. I'm already 33 years old, and she tells me, Russ, you've got a sister. What? And now I know more about this guy named Ted, who got my mother pregnant, than my own father, who also ran off before I ever knew him. Though at least my father hung around long enough to get married. Mom, I said, why the hell didn't you just get an abortion? She sighed. Either that or she blew the smoke out of her cigarette. I could hear it through the phone. It wasn't legal then. A lot of girls put babies up for adoption. Now everybody wants to know their birth mother. So why does she have to get to know you at my house? Because you got the pool. She's got a couple, 3 kids. And with a grandfather who died of epilepsy, that compulsive gambler. Liz is like, oh my God, I can't believe I have a sister-in-law. And she starts cleaning, though we're cooking in the back, most of it pool, a small one, like all the backyards in that miserable neighborhood, a strip of concrete and this 8-foot wall on all 3 sides. I hope she's nice. And she was. 5'8" and built like a model, in spite of pushing out 3 rugrats. At 37, my half-sister looked 23, with the kind of complexion you see on women who did not grow up in Florida, like you, though she did, right across the bay. Her hair is big, blonde, and she's got these flashing eyes, dark, too dark for the light blonde hair, what people say about me, always asking if I bleach it. I couldn't see what she saw in her husband except maybe his money, Rolex, Gucci loafers, and the best haircut he could possibly get, given what little hair he had. He was close to 50, with a belly hanging over his silver buckle. I blame it on Donna and her squirrely kids, one freaking afternoon making sure my new sister didn't have to take home a couple of drowned rats, the way they roughhoused around that pool. And Liz couldn't live without a little boy and girl like your sisters, as she put it. I came home from St. Peter's Ford. Okay, I didn't tell you about that either, but who wouldn't lie about selling cars? Anyway, Liz is flat on her back on a rubber raft in the middle of the pool where she always tanned. And I take off my shirt and tie, and she's jabbering about how cute Donna's kids are with that long blonde hair, We could have blondes. Donna's husband hair is brown, like mine. And I can't tell you the rest, but don't be jealous. I stopped sleeping with that cow months before I met you. And then she got pregnant and I realized she's that kind, put on the earth to make carbon copies, which is why we didn't get along. Those kind of people, Liz and Donna and her faggy husband, are the kind who hold people down, expect everyone to do the same boring shit they do, and when they don't, stick it to them so they can't do what they want. Like the police arresting people so they can say they solved a crime and keep their jobs. Whoever said you have to sleep with the woman you married for the rest of your life was one of those people. And they stick it to you too, because if you divorce her, she'll get half of what you own, more child support, and if you don't pay, they can take it out of your paycheck. The other kind will never let that kind stop them. If they're lucky, the ordinary kind think the others are great, heroes, celebrities, like OJ. If you saw him, wouldn't you ask if you could take his picture? They take pictures of Saddam Hussein naked. They pull down his statue. But 50 years from now, kids will open history books and see his face. I'm the other kind. They might punish me for something I didn't do, but I'm not here to perpetuate the species. And sooner or later, they're going to admire me for taking my fate into my own hands. And that's half the story. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Peter, Stephanie, Taylor, Christine, Robbie, and all of you out there in Zoom land who've joined us. I think I'll start with a new one. It's called COVID-19 2020. And it begins with an epigram that's it's a story of Jesus riding into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. And the verse is from John 12:14. And Jesus, when he had found the young ass, sat thereon, as it is written. It is the year of the Lord and the pandemic. And you plan for church on Easter Sunday on account of your faith? Wait. Are you the best friend of Jesus? No? Then what makes you think he will keep you above ground? Him who did not intervene for his best loved friend, Lazarus, and that man just up and died? He shall not intervene for thee. Plus, if a Savior has to be told that his favorite friend is dead, what makes you think he will find out about your demise? Do you have a sister named Martha? No. Do you have a sister named Mary? No. Then you should listen to my worthless piece of advice. Here it is. Unless you know where Jerusalem is and how to ride all the way there like Jesus did, you ought to keep your ass at home. Tell me, why are you going to leave God at your house all by himself while you go to church during a pandemic to search for him there? One more thought. In case you don't feel like taking my advice, remember now, you have only one chance at being raised from the dead in case this virus gets you and kills you. Here's what you should do. Ask somebody, anybody, to tell Jesus about your passing. Come up with a name that rhymes with Lazarus and see if you can trick him into calling you up. Don't mess this up now. He calls but one name from the grave. That's his pattern. It's like winning the lottery. Somebody always wins, you know. So go ahead and give your faith a shot. But before you head for the congregation of souls, do me a favor. Read that scripture where Jesus tells his disciples, "Come ye apart," whatever that means. So I've been thinking about the children during this lockdown. For example, the homeless child, the child raised in poverty, the child abused in the home. Where's the homeless child right now? Where's he living? Is he able to get to school via Zoom? So that's been consuming me. So I'll do maybe two for the children. If the homeless child had a birthright, Johnny had the right to be born, the right to remain silent, and maybe the right to a few walls heated just so. His last right left when his mother removed her superstoned self and his father slumped into his, screaming for needles and white dust. Johnny pounds the streets, eyes down, shoulders turned carapace, swearing, the next time caring fools provoke him with charity, he will refuse it and watch them rearrange their stride when he demands the time. Instead, he will watch them not understand that PM stands for prison or morgue. And the second one for the children, raw bones and style. I want to be left alone, to hide out in the basement of my high rise near one of the broken windows that will get fixed the morning after Kingdom Come. That's where I unleash the poems that whip my honors teacher into old-time Baptist Holy Roller excitement. So you can understand why I wore my back teeth to stumps the last time I was in a classroom. I was trying to figure out just what I was supposed to learn from the big shot writer my teacher let into my space. Come to waste my air time with his half-jive talk about how tough his life was, how he raked leaves, mowed lawns, shoveled snow, watched babies, and then turned himself into something. The more the man talked, the more I felt like force-feeding him the facts of a poor boy's life. I would love to watch him try flapping with one wing to the sound of his own grief-tainted laughter, when the ravaging forces of his poor life cascades down through his days, driving him to drink gall from other people's goblets over and over again. Maybe my part-time pa is right, he says. Them uppity brothers don't know nothing about nothing. You keep writing, boy, write it raw, you hear? And one of these days, the whole world is gonna have to stand up and call you a Mr. Langston somebody, yeah. Let's do jazz. My old favorite, underground jazz. They came from another planet, it seems, came to force us to surrender all that was proper. And they played on into the night. Take it down, he said to her, one time, take it down. A tap, tap, tap of his right foot, and he began to count off. A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, and she began to blow. She blew that horn like it owed her rent. His tenor sax entered about 3 bars later, and they played on into the night. Sweat drizzled, the juke joint rocked. Musk collected above our heads, just below the chandelier, and they played on into the night. It was a vibe so pure in a place so free. No God would risk sending his angels for fear. They would never return. And so we were alone. Our only protection, Marvin Gaye's advice, let's get it on. Oh, I chimed in despite myself. The stranger beside me reached out both arms and he held me tight. We hummed and we swayed while the band played on into the night. I understood right then how Eve must have felt when Adam bowed his head, closed his eyes, and prayed, let's get it on. Okay, maybe I'll end with this one. I don't know how much time I've used. Poem for my hips, because what if I didn't have some? You move and light shifts from where you are to where you're going and where you were. You pass through both light and air to secret rhythms that fascinate me. I love how smooth the body goes along for the ride. As for ride, please tell me how come you're not tectonic plates? For you caused a major earthquake in the family when you hung that going out of business sign and swore you will take it down when you know who quit his bullying and stopped insisting that your elders made him follow tradition and pay for the marriage license as a sign of respect. And for that, he believes, he is forever entitled to force you to convert yourselves, dear hips, into offering plates every time he was in the mood. Don't think I don't know that whenever you whispered a prayer, you were pleading for a way out, not giving praise. You stood strong, balancing hope and the 3 babies you had helped house. By the time you know who was desperate enough to change his attitude, life in your adopted country had already taught you that no one, not even the husband, owned you. Your prayers now answered. You moved on, carrying the 3 boys and staring into freedom like it's the promised land for you and for them. Look at you now, hips, just look at you. You move with such grace it could arouse jealousy amongst the very angels that kept you sane. Hips, thanks for lifting this girl to higher ground. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Christine. Thank you, Robbie. Oops. And thank you, Gretna, for reading tonight. And thank you all for listening in. We hope to see you at one of our write-ins this week, and also next Saturday. What day was it? What day is this? What month? We hope to see you next Friday night when we hear Barb Daniels, Andy Hockman, and Maribel Garcia. If you have any questions, send us an email at info@murphywriting.com. We'll be happy to respond to you to help keep this community going as long as we can. And on the way out, there'll be a little on the chat box. Stephanie will put a a little link to a Pass the Hat thing. So if you really would like to support what we're doing here, put something in Pass the Hat, and we promise we'll put it on our heads, and we'll be back next week. Thank you for coming. Be safe, socially distance yourselves, and we'll see you soon. Bye.